Hello, wild wanderers and fellow nature nerds. So in the last episode, I told you about Solifuges and Harvestmen, two critters that are arachnids, but are not spiders. And in this episode, I'm going to continue on that theme because there was another one that I wanted to talk about that I just couldn't fit into that episode. So we're going to talk about more arachnids that aren't spiders, but these ones are a little bit spicier. I'm talking about scorpions. Now, scorpions have been around for about 435 million years, and while they live mainly in deserts, they're adapted to a wide range of environmental conditions, and they can be found on all continents except Antarctica. There's about 2,500 species worldwide. 21 live in North America, and 10 of those are found in the United States. And like our other arachnids, scorpions tend to get a bad rap. So let's educate ourselves and take a little bit of the sting out of scorpions. I'm your host, Tim the Nature Nerd O'Hara, and this is the Dispatches from the Forest podcast. Okay, so if you missed the last episode, or maybe you forgot in the last 2 weeks, all spiders are arachnids, but not all arachnids are spiders. But all arachnids have 8 legs. It's kind of the defining characteristic. So just to review real quick, spiders have 2 body segments, a number of eyes that range between 0 and 8. They make silk even if they don't spin a web, and they produce venom which they inject into their prey with fangs. Now you might recall that the arachnids we talked about the last time, Solifuges and Harvestmen, have the requisite 8 legs, but differed from spiders because neither one produced silk or venom or had fangs. And 2 out of 3 of these things are also true for scorpions. They don't produce silk and they don't have fangs. But while Solifuges and Harvestmen can easily be mistaken for spiders just based on the way they look, the same can't be said for scorpions. Scorpions are pretty easy to identify. They have 8 legs. Like I said, it's kind of what defines an arachnid, but they also sport a pair of grasping pinchers and have a narrow segmented tail with a stinger on the end, which is usually carried in a characteristic forward curve over their back. They don't look spider-like at all. But let's take an even closer look at the physical characteristics of scorpions. Scorpions range in size from about 1/3 of an inch at the small end up to 9 inches on the big end. Now, technically, scorpions, like spiders, have 2 body segments, also known as tagmata. The cephalothorax, which is sometimes called the prosoma, and the abdomen, sometimes called the opisthosoma. But just to complicate things further, the abdomen of scorpions, or the opisthosoma, is subdivided into 2 parts, the pre-abdomen, or mesosoma, and the post-abdomen, or metasoma, or aka the tail. The cephalothorax, what we would think of as the head, is a crowded place for a scorpion. It includes the 4 pairs of walking legs, the eyes, the mouth, and the pedipalps. You might remember that in Harvestmen, the pedipalps were not very big, and in Solifuges, they were big, but they played mostly a sensory role. In scorpions, the pedipalps are those pinchers. They serve a sensory role, but they're also used in defense and in grabbing prey. Scorpions have 2 eyes on the top of the cephalothorax, and 2 to 5 pairs of eyes along the front corners of the cephalothorax. Although, like spiders, there are cave-dwelling species that have no eyes at all. But even with all those eyes, their vision isn't great. The scorpion's central eyes can't form sharp images, but they are some of the most light-sensitive eyes in the animal kingdom. Most scorpions are nocturnal, and they can navigate by starlight. The pre-abdomen, mesosoma, of adult scorpions consists of 7 segments. Now, these segments house the genitals. They house comb-like sensory organs called pectines, kind of like the racket organs of solifuges, the heart, and spiracles that connect to the scorpion's 4 pairs of book lungs. But let's talk about that tail. A scorpion's tail consists of 5 segments and the telson, which is not technically considered a segment for reasons that aren't really important for the purpose of this podcast. But the telson is where the venom glands and hardened curved stinger live. So if you're keeping score at home, scorpions may not have fangs like spiders, but they do produce venom like spiders, and unlike Solifuges and Harvestmen. Scorpion venom, like most venoms, is primarily used for rapidly killing or immobilizing their prey. The stings of many species can be uncomfortable for people, like getting stung by a bee or a wasp, but with the exception of severe allergic reactions, only 25 species, so that's just 1%, have a venom that's medically significant to humans. But in some places, scorpion stings are a public health problem, particularly in the tropical and subtropical regions of the Americas, North Africa, the Middle East, and India. Worldwide, there are about 1.5 million scorpion envenomations every year, resulting in about 2,600 deaths. Mexico is actually one of the most affected countries. They have the highest biodiversity of scorpions in the world. They have around 200,000 envenomations per year and an average of 300 deaths. Now, preventing scorpion stings includes things like checking your shoes and clothes before putting them on, not walking around barefoot or in sandals, and filling in holes and cracks where scorpions might nest. Outdoor lighting can also reduce scorpion activity. Controlling scorpions, unfortunately, might involve the use of insecticides or collecting scorpions manually. Domestic predators of scorpions, like turkeys and chickens, can also help reduce the risk to a specific household. And I'll tell you what, as a former chicken owner, those chickens are afraid of nothing. But scorpion venom might be medically significant in another way. It's being researched for an array of possible medicinal uses, including use as an anti-cancer medication. Now, most scorpion species are nocturnal or crepuscular, seeking shelter during the day in burrows, cracks in rocks, and under tree bark. Many species will dig a shelter underneath stones just a few centimeters long. Some use burrows made by other animals, including burrowing spiders, reptiles, and small mammals. And other species dig their own burrows, which can vary in complexity and depth. The blackback scorpion, found in northern Mexico and the southwestern United States, digs burrows that can be nearly 7 feet deep. Now, like I mentioned in the intro, scorpions primarily live in deserts, but they're adapted to a wide range of environmental conditions. They tend to prefer a temperature range between 52 and 104 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 11 to 40 degrees Celsius. But many survive where the temperatures can get well over 120 degrees or 50 degrees Celsius. Now, desert scorpions have several adaptations to conserve water. Their exoskeleton, also known as cuticle, holds in moisture and protects them from UV radiation. Desert scorpions get most of their moisture from the food they eat, but some can actually absorb water from humid soil. And species that live in places with denser vegetation and in more moderate temperatures will drink water on plants and in puddles. Now, in addition, desert-dwelling species need to be able to deal with extreme temperature changes from both day to night and between seasons. There's a species of Asian scorpion that lives where the temperature can reach as low as negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit in the winter and exceed 120 degrees Fahrenheit in the summer. These species will hibernate in the winter. Scorpions also appear to be resistant to nuclear radiation. Now, this was discovered in the early 1960s when scorpions were found to be one of the few animals to survive nuclear tests in Algeria. Take that, cockroaches. Scorpions generally prey on insects, particularly grasshoppers, crickets, termites, beetles, and wasps. But, as you might expect, prey size is going to depend on the size of the scorpion. Other prey can include spiders, solifuges, woodlice, and even small vertebrates, including lizards, snakes, and mammals. Species with large claws are also known to prey on earthworms and mollusks. The majority of scorpions are opportunistic, and they'll consume a variety of prey, though some might be highly specialized. For example, Australia's spider-hunting scorpion preys mostly on, guess what? Burrowing spiders. Some scorpion species are what we call sit-and-wait predators, which means they sit and wait at or near the entrance to their burrow for their prey to come along. Hey, we've got DoorDash, they've got sit and wait. Others are active hunters. They detect their prey with mechanoreceptive and chemoreceptive hairs on their bodies. So basically they sense vibrations from their prey and they smell their prey. They then grab them with their claws. Smaller prey are merely killed with the claws, especially by large clawed species of scorpion. Larger and more aggressive prey might be given a sting with the venomous stinger. Now, scorpions, like spiders, digest their food externally. Their mouth parts are segmented claws like those of harvestmen. They're very sharp, and they're used to pull small pieces off the prey and put them into a structure that's called the preoral cavity. Digestive juices from the guts are then egested, which is a great word, onto the food, and the food is then sucked into the gut in liquid form. Scorpions can consume a large amount of food in a single meal. They have an efficient food storage organ, a very low metabolic rate, and a relatively inactive lifestyle, which means that some of them can actually survive 6 to 12 months of starvation. Despite their fearsome looks and venomous sting, scorpions might also be attacked by other arthropods, including ants, spiders, solifuges, and centipedes. And major predators include frogs, lizards, snakes, birds, and mammals. There's several animals that are adapted to hunting scorpions. Meerkats are somewhat specialized in preying on scorpions and are known for biting off the stingers and being immune to their venom. The grasshopper mouse and desert long-eared bat are also immune to scorpion venom. People eat them too. In many parts of Africa and Asia, they're served as street food, either grilled, roasted, fried, even raw or live, although cooking negates the harmful effects of the venom. In Vietnam, they're even used to make wine. When threatened, scorpions will raise their claws and tail in a defensive posture. Certain species have a preference for using either the claws or the stinger as a defense, usually depending on the size of the appendage, which makes sense. You gotta play to your strengths. Some species will stridulate to warn off predators by rubbing certain hairs or the stinger or the claws. A few scorpions, including the Arizona desert hairy scorpion, squirt venom in a narrow jet as far as 1 meter or 3.3 feet to warn off potential predators, potentially causing eye injury. But some Central and South American species can shed parts of their tail to escape predators. But again, this is a desperation move. Those parts don't grow back, which leaves them both unable to sting and unable to poop, because that particular orifice is found in the segment just before the telson. But they can still catch small prey and reproduce for about 8 months afterward. Okay, speaking of reproduction, scorpion reproduction is surprisingly interesting and kind of tender. Receptive females produce pheromones, which are picked up by wandering males using their pectines. Remember those comb-like sensory structures on the mesosoma I mentioned earlier? Males begin courtship by moving their bodies back and forth without moving the legs, a behavior known as juddering, which is another fantastic word and, incidentally, kind of describes the way I dance. So now I have a word for it. I'm not a bad dancer. I'm really good at juddering. Anyways, in scorpions, this seems to produce vibrations in the ground that are then picked up by the female. The pair then make contact using their pedipalps and perform a dance called the promenade à deux, French for a walk for two, because even scorpion mating sounds more romantic in French. In this dance, the male and female move back and forth while facing each other, as the male searches for a suitable place to deposit his spermatophore. This courtship ritual can also involve other behaviors such as the solicital kiss, where they grasp each other's mouth parts, the arbre droit, again French for upright tree, where the partners elevate their posteriors and rub their tails together, and sexual stinging, when the male stings the female in the mouth parts or mesosoma to subdue her. This dance can last from a few minutes to several hours. When the male has located a suitable spot, he deposits his spermatophore and guides the female over it. She takes it in and voila, she's fertilized. Depending on the species, gestation can last over a year, and all scorpions give birth to live young. The size of the brood varies by species, from a low of 3 to well over 100. Now, before giving birth, the female elevates the front of her body and positions her pedipalps and front legs under her to catch the young. This is called a birth basket. The young emerge one by one and are placed on the mother's back, where they remain until they've gone through at least one molt. The period before the first molt is called the projuvenile stage. The young at this age can't feed or sting, but they have suckers on their feet which they use to hold on to their mother. Now this will last for 5 to 25 days depending on the species. The brood molts for the first time simultaneously in a process that lasts between 6 and 8 hours, and that marks the beginning of the juvenile stage. Now juveniles look like mini adults with fully developed pinchers, hairs, and stingers. But they're still soft and they lack pigment, so they keep riding on their mother's back for protection. They become harder and more pigmented over the next couple of days. They might leave their mother temporarily during that time, but return when they sense danger. Now, once their exoskeleton is fully hardened, the young can hunt on their own and will soon leave their mother. A scorpion molts an average of 6 times before reaching maturity, which can range anywhere from 6 months to 7 years depending on the species, and some species can live up to 25 years. Okay, last cool thing about scorpions, they glow a vibrant blue-green under black light. In fact, I recently bought a UV flashlight partially for this reason. Now this is due to fluorescent chemicals in their cuticle. The fluorescence of young scorpions increases with each molt. And it's thought that this fluorescence plays some role in the scorpion's ability to detect light. Okay, fellow nature nerds, that brings us to the end of today's episode. I hope you enjoyed learning about yet another non-spider arachnid. Remember that like all the rest of arachnids, spiders included, they don't want to hurt you, then they only sting as a defense mechanism. If you want to support the podcast, please consider becoming a patron. You can find all the information at patreon.com/dispatches from the forest. Subscriptions start at the low price of just $5 a month. If you'd like to make a one-time donation or you want to get a hold of me, you can do that through email. And my email and PayPal address are dispatchesfromtheforest@gmail.com. Also, go check out our merch store. There's all kinds of stuff there. That can be found at cafepress.com/shop/dispatches from the forest. For additional content, follow Dispatches from the Forest on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. I'm your host, Tim the Nature Nerd O'Hara, reminding you to go outside and get dirty. The Dispatches from the Forest podcast is a production of Dispatches from the Forest and may not be used or rebroadcast whole or in part without express written permission. Don't make me send in my army of scorpions.